for music notes. We are going to talk about a hymn today that was written by two different gentlemen 20 years apart or so, a couple of decades apart. How can that be? Let's take a listen. So our hymn today is Crown Him with Many Crowns. And as I said, it was written by two different gentlemen, one in 1851, and that was Matthew Bridges. And then it was written again or rewritten in 1874 by Godfrey Thring. So let's get to it and see how that could be possible. Let's see, Matthew Bridges was still alive when Godfrey Thring rewrote the original song. Let's see how that can be. So the original 6 verses of Crown Him with Many Crowns are by Matthew Bridges. And as I said, they were published in 1851. Now, if you are to look in your hymnal on page 525, you'll find Crown Him with Many Crowns, and there's only 5 verses there. So we'll find out in this episode which 5 verses we have. Back to Matthew Bridges. He was born in Essex, England in 1800, and he was educated in the Church of England. Now, he began his literary career with a publication of a poem entitled Jerusalem Regained. That was in 1825. Then he goes on to write another book, and it is titled The Roman Empire Under Constantine the Great. And he wrote that in 1828. Now, this is interesting because the purpose of that book was to examine the real origin of certain papal superstitions. So it sounds like he was a critic of Catholicism at that point in his life. That's in 1828. However, things change. As a result of the influence of John Henry Newman and the Oxford movement, Bridges becomes You guessed it, a Roman Catholic in 1848. So very interesting, that 20-year span, his perspective really changes. Now, if you recall that Oxford movement, that was really kind of like a Roman Catholic revival. And at that time, those in the church were going back to those original Latin texts and Greek texts and finding them and translating them. And that is the basis for many of the texts that we have today in regards to hymns. We talked about that with O Come, Emmanuel, Alleluia, Song of Gladness. There's many of them. But Crown Hymn is not that. Crown Hymn is an original text, as I said. Part of it's by Matthew Bridges, and then we'll talk about Godfrey Thring in a minute. So after Bridges, he's now become a Roman Catholic. He goes on to publish 2 volumes of hymns. The first one is Hymns of the Heart in 1847, and then The Passion of Jesus in 1852. Now, Crown Hymn with Many Crowns was published in his second edition of Hymns of the Heart in 1851, and it was published in 6 8-line stanzas. And it was based on Revelation chapter 19, verse 12. And it's a short little verse, and it reads, "His eyes were like a flame of fire, and he wore many crowns on his head." So that was the inspiration for Matthew Bridges' text for Crown Hymn with Many Crowns. Now, in our hymnal, if you were to look up Matthew Bridges, you will find that we only have this one text in here. Sometimes I'll come across an author and find, oh, he's written multiple poems for us that are in essence then set to music and put in our hymnal. But with Matthew Bridges, it's just this one. So once his text appeared in the appendix to the first edition of the hymnal, or the Hymns, Ancient and Modern, we've come across that in our music notes too, Hymns, Ancient and Modern in 1868, it was like the stamp of approval for Crown Hymn with Many Crowns, that it would then go forward in the decades and then centuries to be well known. Its future was assured. Matthew Bridges, I mentioned he was born in England. Then he does at some point in his life move to Canada, and then he dies in Quebec in 1894. Often we have a hymnology scholar, and one in particular that I like to reference is J.R. Watson, and he notes that, quote, "During the 1870s, objections were made to Bridges' words, perhaps because of the complex references to the Blessed Virgin Mary." Okay, so there's that reference now to maybe his text is sounding too Catholic. And that brings us to the second author of our text, Godfrey Thring. Now, he was born in Somersetshire, England in 1823, and he was born in a parsonage of Alfred, where his father was the rector. He was educated at Balliol College in Oxford, England, and he became an ordained priest of the Church of England in 1847. Okay, so that 1847, that gives you an idea. He's being ordained a priest in 1847, and in 1847, Matthew Bridges has just published his first volume of hymns, Hymns of the Heart. Okay, but Crown Hymn hasn't been published quite yet. Now, 1858, our Godfrey Thring, he returns to the Alfred parsonage to succeed his father as the rector, and he stays there until his retirement in 1893. So he is a pastor there pretty much all of his life. Now, it's around 1874, this devout Anglican clergyman was concerned that the popular hymn, Crown Hymn with Many Crowns, was allowing Catholic theology to be sung in Protestant congregations. So this gave him much concern and much pause. And as a result, he goes ahead and writes 6 new verses. So, I don't know. I think about copyright law. Is that okay? But he just thought that Bridges, the way Bridges wrote, the theology of his text was too leaning Catholic for it to be sung in a Protestant church. So he goes ahead and rewrites it. And he wrote 6 new verses to be sung. He goes on to write many other hymns, and he publishes several hymnals as well. He's got Hymns Congregational that he published in 1866, Hymns and Sacred Lyrics in 1874, and then the very respected A Church of England hymn book adapted to the daily services of the church throughout the year, and that was in 1880. And that goes on to become enlarged as the Church of England hymn book in 1882. So he published a lot of hymns for the Church of England. Now, the new Crown Hymn with Many Crowns version was published in his Hymns and Sacred Lyrics in 1874. So originally, it's published in 1851, then it's republished with different lyrics with a different author in 1874. So what is that? 23 years apart. I wonder what Bridges thought of that. In our text, we have kind of a mashup of the two. We have most of Bridges, the original author's text, and then we have one verse, I believe, maybe 2, of the Godfrey Thring version. Now, let's see, moving on, let's talk about our tune today. So this is a lovely tune, and if we flip back to 525, you'll find the title of our hymn tune today. It's perfectly named. I'm just going to pull it up for you and see what they say in here. Right there at the bottom, it will tell you, and it's diademata. Okay, the diadem, the crown. So, and the reason why it has such the perfect name is because it was written specifically for the text. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes a poet writes a text, and then later on someone writes a melody and they're put together. But this, the tune writer, and his name was George Elvey. He was inspired by the text to write the tune, and so he was able to give the tune a very appropriate name, Diademata. Let's see, a good text, a great text, isn't going to go very far unless it's put to the right tune. We've seen that so many times. I find it when I'm looking at the text on our hymnal sometimes that is perfect for a sermon, but I'm looking at it and it's attached to a tune that we don't know, or it's kind of boring. And sometimes if the meter works, I can switch it up and put that text to a hymn that we know, and then we're like, oh, nice words. We get to hear more beautiful poetry about God. So I like when that happens. But today, our tune is Diademata. It's a stirring tune. It has kind of a march-like yet joyful sentiment about it, yet it's not strident or mechanical. It's exciting, and sometimes we think of singing it on Easter. It's a Redeemer. It's a song about our Lord and Redeemer, and so it's very uplifting, and we enjoy singing it. It was written by Sir George Job Elvey, and he lived from 1816 to 1893. And he wrote it for this hymn when it was published in the Appendix of Hymns, Ancient and Modern, in 1868. Now, a little bit about Sir George Elvey. He was born in Canterbury, England in 1816. He was a chorister in the Canterbury Cathedral, and he lived and studied with his brother Stephen. He was educated at Oxford and also at the Royal Academy of Music. So very, very bright and talented. And at the age of 19, he became the organist and master of the boys' choir at St. George Chapel, Windsor, where he remained until his retirement in 1882. He was also, because he was so talented and well-known, he was frequently called upon to provide music for royal ceremonies. One such was Princess Louise's wedding in 1871, after which he was knighted, hence the Sir. Then Elvie goes on to compose many hymn tunes, anthems, oratorios, sacred music, so quite the composer. Now we actually have some of his tunes as well in our hymnal. Let's look those up. Okay. This one you'll definitely know. Let's see. Page 394, Songs of Thankfulness and Praise. And then 892, Come Ye Thankful People Come. So what's interesting to me is I don't even know that I realized it, but songs of Come Ye Thankful People Come is the same tune as Songs of Thankfulness and Praise. So it never dawned on me that happens again with another tune that we like to sing, and that tune is also by Elvie, and it's called Saint Crispin. And we find that first on page 563. So let's look for that one. That's right. Okay, so this is, wow. Jesus, thy blood and righteousness, my beauty o'er my glorious dress, midst flaming worlds in these arrayed, with joy shall I lift up my head. So that's the tune Saint Crispin, and we sing Jesus, thy blood and righteousness to that tune. And then we also sing to that very same tune, this one. God loved the world so that he gave his only Son, the lost to save. Yep, very same tune, different text. God loved the world so that he gave. And then finally we have the tune Diademata, which is Crown Him with Many Crowns. Can you think of another song we sing to that same tune? Let's see. If you flip to your page 829, there's your answer. I know you know this song. Okay, that's Crown Him with Many Crowns, and Christ the Eternal Lord, whose promise here we claim, whose gifts of grace are freely poured on all who know your name. All right, so that wonderful tune that we love, Diademata, is put with Christ the Eternal Lord. And again, a different text author for that one, but same tune writer. So very interesting. Like I said, you can kind of go down the rabbit hole in your hymnal if you find a tune and then, this gentleman wrote this tune, he wrote this tune, different text, set to all the tunes, and you can just keep exploring hymn by hymn and the connections that they all have with one another. It's pretty fascinating. Now, we've talked about that. Back to the text. I'm done with my music note episode today. You're going to go listen to this amazing version of Crown Him with Many Crowns. But before you do, I'm going to put up on the screen the words by Matthew Bridges, those original 6 verses, and right next to it are going to be the 6 verses by Godfrey Thring. And if you want, you can just hit pause for a moment and read them, and kind of you can decide for yourself if Godfrey Thring had a point, if maybe Matthew Bridges' text was too Catholic to be sung in Protestant churches. You can be the judge of that. And then you'll see I've highlighted in yellow on that page which 5 verses we sing in our hymnal. And I believe 3 of them belong to Bridges and 2 belong to Godfrey Thring. So it's an interesting read in comparison, and they are different, but they get that main point across. Crown him with many crowns, our magnificent Lord and Savior, there for us. So I hope you have enjoyed learning the interesting background of this text, and of course the tune is magnificent. So have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to joining you again in the future for another episode of Music Notes. Bye-bye.
And now for the final hymn, Crown Him with Many Crowns.